North to south, coast to coast, around the world, this is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What is this broadcast all about? It's about the news. We report the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not news. That's my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And then we debate. We debate the aforementioned, and I appreciate it if you would do so. How do you do so? Well, a couple of different ways. You can go to the chat room, which is available to you right where you are right this moment. You can also, by the way, call us on the good old-fashioned way, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Okay. And so, once again, we are doing the third podcast. What we're doing is splitting these up so that you can be a little less inundated with a 3-hour informational broadcast. This is a 3-hour newscast. It's also, by the way, interactive. You can actually call the anchor at the desk and ask a question, make a comment, dispute something, what have you. Diphenhydramine? Yeah, before you can say diphenhydramine. Yeah, exactly. That was something I said at the end of last hour. If you want to know what I'm talking about, you'll see. Anyway, that being said, so we talked today about President Biden's speech before the United Nations. We've talked about Russian President Vladimir Putin deciding that what is probably in the main for him is a call up of more troops. And that's creating hate and miscontent on the streets of Russia at this particular moment. We've talked a little bit about how President Trump is now being sued by the Attorney General of New York. She's not preferring criminal charges. She's going after the president in civil court. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means she can't prove criminality on the part of the president, so she's hoping that she can simply use the civil court process to exact some kind of revenge on the Trump organization. We talked about that and what that means. The economy, the Fed has raised its key interest rate another 75 basis points or 0.75%. That will have frank effects on the economy, which is exactly what the Fed is trying to get done. They want to slow the economy down so that we can slow inflation down. As I said on the chat room earlier today, what I said was this: inflation will kill an economy. A recession will only damage it. Those are the choices we have. That's the price we pay for $1.9 trillion in spending. That's also, by the way, spending that was added to by the president through executive orders that, depending on who you talk to, will cost another $1 trillion being dumped into the economy. And so there you go. That's the situation that you have. And it's going to be with us for 6 to 8 years. It's going to be with us for a long time. All because somebody wanted the U.S. economy to turn away from easily available, cheap energy into some pie in the sky, quite literally, pie in the sky renewable energy scheme, which does not exist yet. And if you don't believe me, go out and buy yourself an electric car and see how far you can drive with it and see how you're going to recharge it. You can't do it in California because they don't have the power yet. They don't have a power grid that can handle electric cars, plus the needs they have. They were talking about rolling blackouts this summer simply because it got hot. I mean, especially in California. Okay, California, you're right at the center of climate change, right? Why didn't you do something about the electricity grid when you had a chance? Oh, that's right. Because in order to increase the capacity at the electric grid, you're going to have to put up more power stations that burn fossil fuels. And you can't do that. Well, what about the nuclear plants? You've got 3 of them sitting there in mothballs. Well, it would cost more to get those things refurbished and back online than it would to build brand new ones. Okay, build brand new ones. Well, we can't. It's nuclear energy. It'll kill everyone. Right. So how are we going to charge our electric cars again? Charging stations. Yeah, where are they? Well, they're on a drawing board somewhere. This is where we find our nation right now. Why do we find our nation here? Because the United States of America elected Joe Biden as president in 2020. Did we actually elect Joe Biden? No. No, we elected somebody who's running Joe Biden. Joe Biden isn't capable of being the president. He's never been capable of being the president. But somehow he got anointed and he was the president. Who's actually running the country? You don't know. I don't know. None of us knows. But we do know something about them. They are sociopathic. They are sociopathic people, policymakers that can only see what they want as opposed to what America needs. That is not what the constitutionally based republic that we all live in is supposed to be doing. But that's okay because they don't think that this constitutionally constructed republic is worthy of keeping. They'd rather have the political process in charge of everything instead of just some things. Okay, well, how is that working? Not real well at all. So once again, that's where the sociopathic policymakers come in that you don't know the names of. You can't vote them out of office because you never voted them into office. You voted in a figurehead. And there you go. And that's why we're in this situation where we are. Now, will the American people do something about it? I don't know. In order to do this, you have to hand the Democrat Party a thundering defeat of disastrous proportions. So they never do this again. So they get rid of all these people like Gavin Newsom. They get rid of all of these leftist, socialist, anti-American fascists. Now, point out, I'm not calling leftist voters fascists. I'm talking about anti-American, I keep getting stuck between sociopath and socialists. These people are communists. These people are socialists. They're totalitarian. We had somebody in the mainstream media call for the full weight and power of the United States government to crush somebody they disagreed with politically. That person has a network television job. That's what these people do. And whenever somebody stands up and says, no, you won't do that, well, suddenly you've got a whole machine of other people that are trying to do everything they possibly can to destroy those people that had the guts to stand up. All because we made the decision we made in 2020. Do our votes matter? I don't know. How does losing an entire month's worth of salary because of price increases feel to you now? Is that a good thing? How does spending another $100 to fill your gas tank feel? How does that feel? Langston is here in the chat room still claiming voter fraud. I'm not claiming voter fraud. The people of the United States elected President Biden, and this is what we have. Is that wrong in some way, shape, or form? The answer is, yeah. Yeah. It's way wrong. Look at what's going on with the nation. Anyway, that being said, well, what's the solution, JD? Well, like I said, you have to hand the Democrats a stunning and horrifying defeat. What will that do? Well, they'll have to change. They'll have to become a pro-American party instead of an anti-American party. Okay. But if we vote the Democrat Party out of power, who do we elect? That's right, Republicans. Republicans don't want the job of running the country. You know why? Because they're not good enough to. At least the Democrats have a killer instinct. They have a killer instinct. They are sociopaths. They will do anything they think is necessary to be able to get their vision plugged into the United States of America. Republicans, they're just trying to defend the Constitution of the United States and doing a poor job of it. You got to have somebody that will absolutely strangle their political enemies, not with a noose, but with the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States. Do you believe any Republican you know has that kind of guts? Any of them? Well, there are a few, but there you go. That's how we found ourselves in this position. Will the Republicans, if we give them power, do anything? I don't know. They haven't the last time we did it, or the time before that. Is this time going to be different? I don't know. The only Republicans I'm seeing that have done anything worthy of that would be Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, and handfuls of other people. Those are the only ones. Those people, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, they're not in Washington, D.C. They're not senators. They're not representatives. And therefore, they can't go to Washington, D.C. to clean up this mess or to push the Republican Party into actual action for the people of the United States, as opposed to just trying to enable Democrat policy because they're too timid. We need meat eaters. You're not going to find them in most Republican enclaves. Elect thy neighbor. Control of the House of Representatives, says USA Today, is on the ballot in November, and with it the ability for President Joe Biden to achieve much of his remaining political agenda. Yeah. Democrats currently control the House and Senate. Historic trends in numerous polls suggest the Republicans will flip at least the House. But that win looks less certain now than it did earlier in the year with factors like the Supreme Court Dobbs decision. And instead of the Republican Party saying, fine, the Democrat Party is now the party of abortion. Unrestricted abortion. Instead of saying that, they're just saying, boy, I hope it doesn't cost us votes. Well, what you need to do is you need to go out there and say what this actually means. And the Republican Party, once again, doesn't show the guts necessary to be able to do that. Or they'd be doing it. One guy did. Lindsey Graham said, how about a national law that says no abortions after 15 weeks? How about that? And everybody savaged him in the press. Why? Because they don't want to solve the problem. That's why. They don't want to solve it. They'd rather have the issue. They'd rather have the issue to beat us over the heads with for political effect instead of actually solving the problem. And nobody reports the Dobbs decision properly except me. It was a return to the Constitution by the Supreme Court of the land. That was a good thing, not a bad thing. And so now, leftist papers are saying, gosh, the Democrats have a chance to win. I certainly hope not. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report, the third hour. In fact, you can go back and check out the first or second hour podcasts. They're individual. That will only take you about, 54 minutes or so to listen to those. Instead of having to listen to the entire 3-hour broadcast. I don't know that this is working, but we're going to give it a hell of a try. We're going to see if splitting this stuff up works. So far, people are having trouble finding the live stream. If you're having trouble finding the live stream, make sure that you subscribe to the broadcast. That way, when a new one comes up, you get a notice. Okay? There's a little bell on some of the websites, the streaming services, that will also let you know when the new broadcast comes up. I try to put the new hour up about a minute before we hit the air. So that should work out so that if you hit that link, it should pop you right into the live broadcast as opposed to some of the other ones, okay? So that being said, let's get back to the business. Let's get back to the business at hand, okay? And that is whether or not the Republican Party will control the House of Representatives and or the Senate following the 2022 election in about 59 days, 58 days. It's not long. So how will that work? Well, I suspect that the people of the United States will turn the Republican Party into the prevailing party in both the House and the Senate. That's what I suspect. Because what we've seen has been disastrous. When nearly 75% of the people that are polled over and over and over again say the country's going down the wrong or going the wrong direction, something's going to change in Washington, D.C. in the next election. What fascinates me, though, is it doesn't appear as though the Democrat Party really is worried about it, which makes me worry about it. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Iowa Democrat Representative Cindy Axne last month voted on the Inflation Reduction Act, but she wasn't there. Apparently, she was in Europe as she voted by proxy. At the time of the vote, which took place August 12th, Axne, who currently represents Iowa's 3rd congressional district, was in France. This according to an image shared to Instagram by her son. Is that probable that it was actually a photograph taken in France? Yeah. How do we know? Well, the photo was apparently removed from Instagram right after Fox News inquired about where the representative was. If she wasn't doing something wrong, she'd have said, I'm in France. I'm going to Disney Paris. I'm having a wonderful time. And oh, by the way, I voted on the Inflation Reduction Act. But that's not what she did. The photograph shared to Instagram from her son's account was captioned France Part 1, shows Axne standing alongside her husband and son. Okay, so like I said, they're not really concerned about whether they lose this election. Why is that? Is that because they happen to believe the Dobbs decision is going to destroy the Republicans for the 2022 election? Or is there something else that they think is going to happen? I wonder. In Ohio, a Trump-endorsed congressional candidate has been called an Afghanistan veteran for his Air Force service. Military records obtained by the Associated Press show he was never stationed there. J.R. Majewski, who was running against longtime Democrat Representative Marcy Kaptur, served in Qatar for 6 months but was never stationed in Afghanistan. That would mean he was an Afghanistan war-era veteran. The House Republican Campaign Committee recently touted Majewski's squadron was one of the first on the ground in Afghanistan after 9/11. And so we're going to find out more about that as time goes on. Also, by the way, the Democrats or the Republicans hit back after Democrat Kansas governor said, of course, men shouldn't play girls' sports. What is that person talking about, and why is the GOP hitting back? We'll get that to you in just a couple of moments. You are listening to the Wells Report. Back in a flash with more of the news, commentary, and debate. Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. So just to tell you what I was talking about a second ago, Democrat Kansas Governor Laura Kelly launched a TV ad where she says, of course men shouldn't be allowed to play women's sports. But the GOP in Kansas immediately said, excuse me? Here's how the script goes in the TV commercial from Democrat Governor Laura Kelly. You may have seen my opponent's attack, so let me say it. Of course, men should not play girls' sports. Okay, we all agree there. Derek Schmidt has been pushing for cutting funding for public schools because of it. Schmidt, however, pointed out that Governor Kelly vetoed bills from the state legislature that would have prohibited biological males from participating in women's sports at schools as transgender athletes twice. She's been with Biden on transgender boys playing in female sports for years. Now at re-election time, she lies. Kansans know it and will vote her out. Okay, yeah, that's pretty ugly. Coming up in just a couple of seconds, I'm going to ask or answer this question. First of all, are you a drunk driver and just don't know it? Well, there are people that are out there that know that you're actually a drunk driver. You just don't know it. I'll explain all that in just a couple of moments. But first, support this broadcast. We bring you reality. We bring you reality. It's news, analysis, commentary, and debate. It's a real newscast. Watch it. Share it. Subscribe to it. And if you'd like to participate in this through monetary means, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. That's Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. You can subscribe for $1 a month. $1. If everybody who is watching this broadcast right now subscribe to it through Patreon and made a pledge of $1 a month, I'd get $42, maybe 50. Okay, it's more than that, but I just feel uncomfortable asking. But throughout my radio career, the people that have always supported me have been you. And now that I'm independent, I don't work on purpose for radio stations, although there are radio stations that take this. I'm not getting paid by them either, so this is an independent voice. If that appeals to you in some way, support the show. Support the report. I would appreciate it. Now let's get back to business. So are you a drunk driver and just don't know it? The NTSB says you are. The National Transportation Safety Board. Okay? The National Transportation Safety Board is an executive branch agency that is sure that you are a drunk driver and just don't know it yet. This decision from the NTSB comes following an investigation into a head-on collision that took place on New Year's Day 2021 in Avenel, California, between a speeding SUV being driven by an impaired driver in a pickup truck that left 9 people dead. 9 people. Technology could have prevented this heartbreaking crash, just as it can prevent the tens of thousands of fatalities from impaired driving and speeding-related crashes we see in the U.S. annually, said National Transportation Safety Board Chair Jennifer Homendy. We need to implement technologies we have right here, right now, to save lives. And what is that, you might ask? Well, what they want to do is they want to make sure that every car and truck sold in the United States has an alcohol interlock. Excuse me? Yeah, you see, when you are convicted of drunk driving, typically more than once, they put an alcohol interlock into your car. Before you can start it, you have to breathe into it. If there's alcohol on your breath, your car won't start. But that's just the beginning. Not only will your car not start, but it will also phone home to the authorities to tell anybody that happens to be at the other end of that message that you had been drinking alcohol and tried to start your car. Does that sound like due process to you? No. Fortunately, the NTSB has no regulatory authority itself. I don't believe any executive branch agency should have regulatory authority. In other words, have regulations that have the weight of law. The NTSB has told the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that it should implement a requirement for the systems along with a program that would incentivize automakers and consumers to, quote, adopt intelligent speed adaptation systems that would prevent speed-related crashes even when alcohol is not involved, unquote. In other words, somebody else is going to control the speed of your car. Does this sound like America to you? By the way, if they put all this stuff in, people are still going to die in car crashes, right? You do understand that, don't you? According to the NTSB, there were 11,654 fatalities that occurred in alcohol-impaired crashes in 2020. These, by the way, don't count the ones that were actually pulled off by illegal aliens that were driving cars illegally in the United States, drunk and killing American citizens. So the number is actually probably higher. Okay. That may not be true, but I'm pretty sure it is. That was just my opinion. I probably should have been less sarcastic about it, but I'm truly sarcastic on this issue. So let's start over. Just disregard what I just said. According to the NTSB, there were 11,654 fatalities that occurred in alcohol-impaired crashes in 2020, which represents approximately 30% of all accident-related deaths. The NHTSA is already working on the topic as the infrastructure bill signed into law by President Biden in 2021 included a requirement for all vehicles to be equipped with passive alcohol interlocks, which would make them inoperable if a high blood alcohol level is detected. The law dictates that regulations be developed within 3 years, gives automakers 2 years to comply, but allows the Department of Transportation to extend the periods if technically necessary. No, I'm sorry. You are not going to go ahead and convict me as a drunk driver and put an alcohol interlock in my car. You're not going to do it. You're not going to control the speed of my car. I'm going to control the speed of my car. Period. This is regulatory garbage run amok. Unlike the systems currently mandated by states for drivers convicted of DUI offenses, which require them to breathe into a tube before starting their vehicles, the NTSA and 17 automakers have been developing and testing a passive breath test and a touch system that uses infrared light to measure blood alcohol level through the skin as part of the DADS, Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety program. That's right. The NHTSA becomes your dad and measures whether or not you are capable of driving your car. In other words, not only are you buying a car, but you're also buying a car that is being monitored by the government at every possible moment. And only they will decide whether or not you're fit to drive your own car. Seriously? Seriously? Details on how the final version of the technology will operate are still being worked out, but the current aftermarket interlock systems typically cost $60 to $150 to install and $60 to $80 a month to calibrate and monitor remotely, according to the manufacturer Lifesaver. Jay Stanley, a senior policy analyst for the ACLU, said the organization stand by that would just yes. Said the organization applauds efforts to save lives, but this technology raises concern about the mishandling of personal information. Well, of course it does. This particular circumstance convicts everybody in the United States as a drunk driver, whether they have been a drunk driver or not. And if indeed this passive system notes that you tried to start your car when you were impaired or when it thought you were impaired, it's going to phone home and tell them. This is called the surveillance society running amok. There are a lot of ways that safety can be improved, but don't involve invading people's privacy. Keeping the data in the vehicle would help address that. No, because there's already stuff in your vehicle that tells anybody who can download it how fast you were going, whether your turn signals were on, whether you had your seatbelt fastened, any number of things. It's a black box that downloads the last 30 seconds of what happened in your car. In other words, if you have an accident, they download the black box. And your car testifies against you in court, regardless of whether or not you're guilty of anything. Let me explain how that works. So my wife is driving down the road, peacefully minding her own business. Okay? She is doing 40 miles. Actually, she's doing 42 miles an hour. The speed limit on that road was 40. Somebody in a pickup truck, for whatever reason, turned right in front of her. There was no driveway where the guy was turning. She hit the car. Our car was older. It was totaled because it wasn't worth fixing, according to the people that determine such things. The other vehicle was totaled because of the impact. The insurance company covering the other car downloaded the black box in Susan's truck and determined that she was speeding, and therefore decided that they were not going to pay the entire claim, but was only going to pay 60% of it. Excuse me? What are you saying? And they were nasty about it, by the way. And I'll never do business with that insurer ever in my life. And you know which one it is. I'm not going to tell you. But if you ask me, I will tell you. I won't tell you on the air, but if you ask me, I will tell you individually. You can't ask me. I'm not going to do it. Because there are an awful lot of people that have that insurance and they're friends of mine. Okay? So all I can say is that, yeah, keeping the data in the car, an alcohol sniffer system, doesn't do anybody any good at all. At all. Jay Stanley from the ACLU continued, I hope regulators recognize the seriousness of this issue and don't mess around with how the information is collected and managed by the automakers. It's not going to be managed by the automakers. It's going to be managed by auto insurers. And if indeed you show up positive for alcohol when you try to start your car, your insurance rate's going to go up. Instantly. With no opportunity of appeal. Except, of course, you can cancel your insurance and try to get other insurance. And while you're filling out that paperwork, they're going to say, by the way, has your passive alcohol system ever tripped positive? And if you don't answer it, then you invalidate your insurance. The NHTSA says on its website, in order to be considered for widespread deployment, the DADS technology must be seamless, accurate and precise, unobtrusive to the sober driver. It must also be proven reliable to be installed in the vehicle fleet and publicly favorable. It's not publicly favorable. This is insidious totalitarianism. And it's coming to visit you. You see, when I talk about the constant, nonstop leftist bombardment on the Bill of Rights of the United States, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about right here. Not only will they stop your car from running, but they'll also have information as to why they stopped your car from running. Anything that happens in your car can and will be used against you in a court of law. And because it's going to be seamless, accurate, and precise, and unobtrusive to the sober driver, that means it's a big secret. So what else is it monitoring? Is it going to send your weight? Is it going to send your weight to the insurance company too, who can then lift your height off your driver's license and determine what your BMI is? Is that what's going to happen? How much of this information is going to cost you huge amounts of money or your freedom or both? The answer is all of it. And it's already been passed in this fantastic bill that we're now, the infrastructure bill signed into law, the $1.9 trillion one. So we're going to have to get rid of that. Yeah, what about diabetics? How about blood glucose measurement? Yeah, exactly. You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast today. And so, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is essentially going to turn you into a drunk driver whether you are or not. They are working to put passive alcohol sensors in your car, whether you want them there or not. The ACLU says, well, as long as that information stays in the car, well, it's not going to stay in the car. If you have an accident, all that information is going to be downloaded in your car, from your car, up to and including the last time you tried to start your car and the interlock said no. That information is going to get shared far beyond you and your car. Have you broken any laws? No, you just tried to start your car. Well, but you were drunk at the time. No, I wasn't. Well, the alcohol interlock said you are. Right. And so there you go. The answer is no. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, we have an intrinsic right to travel, right? The right to travel within the United States is a fundamental right existing before the creation of the United States and appears in the Articles of the Confederation. The right to travel is recognized and protected by the U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court. This travel right entails privacy, leaving citizens free to travel interstates or traveling interstate without governmental interference and intrusion. Apparently, that's being set aside, whatever the constitutional parts of that are. Okay? So these regulations impermissibly require citizens to relinquish one fundamental right of privacy in order to exercise another fundamental right of travel. The original conception of travel rights embodies the right as a broadly based one that encompasses all modes of transportation. Its explicit articulation in the Articles of the Confederation remains implicit in the Privileges and Immunities Clause of the United States Constitution, but it's not actually in there, is it? No, it's not. Remember the Fourth Amendment? It's now just a vague notion. Everything you say on your phone, recorded. Every email you send, every text, it's all recorded. Well, but we don't do anything with it. Right. Until you step on somebody's political toes, and then all of a sudden, all that stuff gets downloaded because it's all there with your name. And if they don't have your name, at least they have your biometric facial recognition or any other number of biometric capabilities. Just for a few punches of a button, all that stuff comes up. They'll find something that you're guilty of. I promise. They're already doing it, by the way, the FBI and all kinds of other police organizations. They're looking through your Facebook. They're looking through all of the things that you do and so on and so on. They're connecting the dots. And if they see that you frequent a couple of different places and say, for example, they happen to be looking over that place for one reason or another, they're going to see whether or not you can be a witness or whether or not you can be part of the criminal trial that's sure to come if they feel like they want to prosecute you. Really not a problem as long as the police actually follow the laws of the land. But is the FBI doing that now? Just asking. And this fundamental right that everybody takes for granted, well, that's not actually the case. The right to privacy, we don't have a right to privacy in these United States. And if we do, they're constantly being redefined by whoever happens to be in political charge of the country in order to suit their politics of the moment. So is this all going to end up in the Supreme Court? Sure, it will. And so once again, we're going to be trusting 9 people in black robes that have never faced an election by the people of the United States to determine how we live. Why? Because a Democrat Congress came up with the idea that maybe your right to travel isn't unfettered. Maybe you don't have a right to privacy, especially when 9 people get killed in a traffic accident in California. How many people get killed every day because of fentanyl? Have they done anything about that? No. But if they have an opportunity to stop you from freely traveling anywhere you want to go, they're sure going to jump all over that. We keep electing the wrong people. And those people who say those dang Democrats, well, where were the Republicans when the Democrats put that in there? Well, they couldn't do anything about it because they're not in power. Sure, they could. They could go out and say, by the way, this bill has a problem in it. It provides for putting alcohol interlocks into every car in the United States. Excuse me? So the next time you have a chance to vote, you need to be better prepared to make a better decision. Because the people you're voting for right now are trying to make The Constitution and Bill of Rights of the United States, just a vague footnote in history as they proceed with the enlightened political state run by the geniuses that are, well, at least elected by the people for now. Because they're so smart and so intelligent, pretty soon they'll just start electing themselves. Yeah. Well, let's hope not. Let's hope you do better jobs in the voting booth than you've done so far. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of this broadcast. Thanks for joining us today. And just like that, that's the end of Hour 3. And thank you very much for joining us here on the Wells Report. God bless you all. Take good care. I'll talk to you later, okay?